My ex-husband abandoned us 6 years ago. Now he showed up at my door, crying and begging to be part of our daughter's life again. I almost fell for it until his brother told me the cruel truth. The sun was shining brightly in the local park, casting a warm glow on the vibrant green grass where children ran and played. I sat on a bench, watching my daughter, Lily, chase after a butterfly, her laughter ringing like music in the air. It was our usual weekend routine, and I cherished these moments more than anything. The park had become our sanctuary, a place where the weight of the past could be momentarily forgotten. "Catch it, Mommy. Look at how pretty it is." Lily squealed, her little legs pumping as she darted after the delicate creature. I smiled, my heart swelling with pride and love. At 6 years old, she was a bundle of energy and joy, a testament to the life I had fought so hard to rebuild after Lucas left. "Go, Lily, you can do it," I cheered, clapping my hands. The butterfly flitted away, but Lily didn't mind. She turned to me, her bright blue eyes sparkling with excitement. "Did you see that? It was so close." As I watched her, a shadow flickered in my mind. An image of Lucas, the man who had once been my partner, now a ghost of my past. I quickly pushed the thought aside. I wasn't going to let him ruin another moment of happiness. Not today. "Can we go to the swings next?" Lily asked, her cheeks flushed from the excitement of the chase. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's go," I replied, rising from the bench and taking her tiny hand in mine. As we walked toward the swings, I felt the warmth of the sun on my face, and for a moment, I allowed myself to bask in the joy of the present. As I walked home, the crisp autumn air filled my lungs, but it did little to clear the fog of emotions clouding my mind. The letter from Lucas lingered like an unwelcome guest in my thoughts, and Sarah's words replayed in a loop. Did I owe him this? Did Lily? A part of me wanted to protect her from the storm I had barely survived. Another part couldn't ignore the hopeful glint in her eyes when she spoke of him. When I stepped into our small apartment, I found Lily sprawled on the floor, crayons scattered around her. She was drawing something, two figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Her blue eyes lifted to mine, brimming with excitement. "Mommy, it's us," she exclaimed, pointing to the taller figure. "And this is Daddy." Her small finger hovered over a figure on the other side of the page. My breath caught. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "You're such a talented artist." Her face lit up with pride, and I crouched beside her, tracing the outline of the stick figures. My chest tightened. How could I tell her that the man she imagined wasn't the one who left us behind? Or had he truly changed, as his letter claimed? Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that YouTube can understand and deliver more of our content to you. That night, after putting Lily to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in my hands. The words inside were etched in my mind, but I reread them anyway, searching for something I had missed. An ulterior motive, a clue, anything to reveal whether this was genuine or another disaster waiting to unfold. The next morning, I decided to meet Lucas. If nothing else, I owed myself clarity, and I owed Lily a chance to know the truth. We agreed to meet at the cafe near the park, a neutral ground where memories of the past couldn't haunt us too strongly. I spotted him as I entered, seated at a small table near the window. He looked up as the bell over the door chimed, his face a mix of apprehension and hope. He had aged since I last saw him. His face was more lined, and his hair was peppered with gray. Yet, his eyes were unmistakable, a mirror to the man I had once trusted. "Mariana," he said softly, rising as I approached. I nodded, slipping into the chair across from him. "Lucas." For a moment, silence hung between us, heavy with everything unsaid. I looked out the window, watching a mother and child walk by, hand in hand. The sight was almost too much to bear. "I didn't think you'd come," Lucas admitted, his voice breaking the tension. "Neither did I replied honestly. "Why now, Lucas? Why after all this time?" He took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "I don't have an easy answer. I've spent years trying to make sense of my mistakes. Leaving Lily, it was the worst thing I've ever done. I was scared, weak, and I took the coward's way out. I can't undo that, but I want to try to make it right. I studied him, searching for cracks in his resolve. And what does that mean? What do you want from us? I want to know my daughter, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I want to be there for her, to make up for the time I've lost. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a chance. His words were sincere, but sincerity alone wasn't enough. Lily doesn't even know you. You're a stranger to her. How do I know you won't hurt her like you hurt me? I won't, he said firmly, leaning forward. I've spent 6 years trying to fix myself. Therapy, work. I'm not the man I was when I walked away. I've made mistakes, but I swear to you, I won't abandon her. Or you. The last words hung in the air like a fragile thread. This isn't about us, Lucas. This is about her. I need time to think about what's best for Lily. Of course, he said, his expression softening. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Later that day, I found myself back at the park, watching Lily as she ran toward the swings. The sun cast long shadows, and the sound of children's laughter filled the air. My thoughts were elsewhere, grappling with the decision I faced. Could I trust Lucas? Could I risk opening a door I had fought so hard to keep closed? Mommy! Push me! Lily's voice broke through my reverie, and I smiled despite the turmoil within me. Her joy was infectious, a reminder of what I was fighting for. Higher, Mommy! I want to touch the sky, she exclaimed, her laughter ringing out as I pushed the swing. As I watched her, a thought struck me. Perhaps this wasn't just about Lucas proving himself. It was about me letting go of the fear that had held me captive for so long. Maybe, just maybe, the past didn't have to dictate our future. I need to consider what's best for Lily, I said firmly, my tone growing more defensive than I intended. Mark's doubt mirrored the inner turmoil I had been fighting since Lucas's letter arrived. But hearing it voiced out loud stirred a protective instinct that refused to let anyone else dictate my decisions. Mark sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. I get that, Mariana, I do. But don't let him twist things. He knows how to play on your emotions. Twist things? You think this is easy for me? I snapped, the weight of my conflicted feelings bubbling to the surface. You think I don't question every word he says? But this isn't about me or even you. This is about Lily, and I have to at least try to figure out what's right for her. Mark softened, his posture less confrontational as he stepped closer. I just don't want you to get hurt again. Or Lily. You've built something solid for her. Don't let him knock it all down. His words lingered as he stepped away, his expression one of reluctant understanding. I nodded silently, watching him disappear into the bustling crowd before turning toward home. The walk back to the apartment felt heavier this time, like each step carried the weight of past mistakes and unspoken fears. Lily greeted me at the door, her face lighting up like the morning sun as she held up another crayon masterpiece. Mommy, look, it's us at the park. Her joy momentarily chased away the shadows in my mind, and I crouched to admire the drawing. This is beautiful, sweetheart. You're getting so good at this. Can Daddy see it too? Can he? She asked eagerly, her blue eyes wide with hope. I froze, the question slicing through me like a cold wind. Maybe, I said cautiously, but we'll have to see how things go. Okay? Her innocent excitement both warmed and broke my heart. She deserved the truth, but I wasn't sure how to give it to her yet. I couldn't promise her the father she dreamed of without knowing whether Lucas could truly be that man. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Lucas's words echoed in my mind. I've changed. I'm not the man I was. But change wasn't enough. It wasn't a switch that could erase years of abandonment or heal the scars left behind. I needed clarity, answers, proof, and there was only one way to get them. The next morning, I called Lucas, asking him to meet me at the park, a space that felt safer, neutral. He agreed without hesitation, his voice carrying a mix of hope and apprehension. When we arrived, Lily's laughter was already ringing out as she darted around the playground. Lucas spotted her immediately, his expression softening with awe. She's beautiful, he murmured, almost to himself. She's everything, I replied, my voice steady but guarded. That's why I need you to understand what's at stake here. If you're serious about being in her life, you have to prove it. Not just to me, but to her. He nodded, his eyes never leaving Lily as she climbed onto the swings. I will, whatever it takes. Then start by being honest, I pressed. Why now, Lucas? What's really changed? He turned to me, his expression raw. I've been through hell, Mariana. Losing you, losing her. It broke me. I tried to pretend I was fine, but I wasn't. Therapy helped me see that I was running from everything, and I didn't want to run anymore. I know I don't deserve an easy way back into your lives, but I'm here because I want to do the hard work. His vulnerability caught me off guard, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I had loved years ago. But trust wasn't something I could give freely, not now. Words are easy, Lucas. It's your actions that will matter. I know, he said simply, and I'll show you. I'll show both of you. The weeks that followed were a cautious dance of boundaries and rebuilding. Lucas began visiting Lily regularly at the park under my watchful eye. At first, their interactions were tentative, filled with shy questions and uncertain smiles. But as time passed, their connection began to blossom. Lily's laughter grew louder, and Lucas's walls seemed to come down. But doubts still lingered, creeping in during quiet moments. Mark's warnings echoed in my mind, and I couldn't ignore the nagging question. Was Lucas truly here for Lily, or was he looking for redemption at her expense? One afternoon, as Lucas and Lily played tag near the swings, Mark showed up unexpectedly, his face clouded with concern. Mariana, we need to talk, he said quietly, pulling me aside. Mark, I don't have time for this right now, I said, watching Lucas chase Lily with an unguarded smile. You need to know something, he insisted. Lucas is still dealing with financial trouble. He didn't tell you, did he? I stiffened, my heart sinking. No, he didn't. I'm not trying to ruin this for you, Mark said, his tone earnest. But if he's hiding something this big, you need to question his motives. My mind raced. I wanted to believe Lucas, but trust was a fragile thing, and his silence on such a significant issue felt like a betrayal. I'll handle it, I said firmly, turning back to the playground. This is my decision, Mark, not yours. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I confronted Lucas. The apartment felt smaller, more suffocating, as I leveled him with a steady gaze. Why didn't you tell me about your financial problems? His face fell, guilt washing over him. I didn't want to burden you, he admitted. I've been trying to fix it on my own. But we're supposed to be rebuilding trust, I countered, my voice trembling. How can I believe you've changed if you're still keeping secrets? He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. You're right. I should have told you. I've made mistakes, but I'm trying, Mariana. Please don't shut me out now. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, but so was my fear. I need time, Lucas. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about Lily. I understand, he said softly, and I'll wait as long as it takes. As he left, the weight of the decision ahead pressed down on me. Could I trust him? Could I risk letting him into Lily's life, knowing the scars he might reopen? One thing was certain. This was only the beginning of a much longer journey. After a couple of hours, the visit came to an end, and Lucas stood at the door, looking hesitant. His hand lingered on the doorknob as he turned to me. Can I come back tomorrow? He asked, his tone careful, almost pleading. I hesitated, glancing at Lily, who was sitting on the floor surrounded by crayons, a beaming smile lighting up her face. We'll see, I replied cautiously, my voice measured. I'll let you know. Thank you, he said softly, his eyes searching mine. For today. As he left, the door clicking shut behind him, I felt a strange mix of relief and unease. The way Lily's face lit up when she saw him. It was a joy I hadn't seen in her before. But Mark's warning lingered like a stubborn shadow, and I couldn't ignore the nagging doubt in the back of my mind. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she wrapped her small arms around my neck, pulling me close. Mommy, I'm so happy Daddy came. she whispered, her voice filled with sleepy contentment. I stroked her hair, fighting back the wave of emotion threatening to overtake me. I know, sweetheart. I'm glad you had fun. Do you think he'll come back? She asked, her eyes heavy but hopeful. We'll see, I said gently, kissing her forehead. For now, it's bedtime. As she drifted off to sleep, I sat by her bedside, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest. My heart ached with the weight of my uncertainty. I wanted to believe in Lucas's sincerity, for Lily's sake, but the stakes felt impossibly high. The next day, I decided to meet Mark again, hoping for more clarity. We met at a quiet cafe, far from the noise of the park and playgrounds. He was already seated when I arrived, a steaming mug of coffee in his hands. He looked up as I approached, his expression neutral but expectant. Thanks for meeting me, I said, sliding into the chair across from him. I'm glad you called, he replied, leaning forward slightly. I had a feeling you'd want to talk. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Lucas came by yesterday. He spent time with Lily. Mark's brows furrowed, but he stayed silent, letting me continue. He seemed different, tentative, awkward, but he tried. And Lily, she was so happy, Mark. I haven't seen her smile like that in ages. Mark sighed, setting his mug down. I don't doubt that he loves her, Mariana, but love isn't always enough. You know that better than anyone. His words hit harder than I expected, and I felt a pang of frustration. I get that, Mark, but if there's even a chance he's serious about this, don't I owe it to Lily to let him try? Mark leaned back, his arms crossed. That's your call to make. But just remember, Lucas has a history of running when things get tough. If you're going to let him back into her life, you need to be prepared for what happens if he doesn't stick around. I nodded slowly, his words sinking in. I'll be careful, but I have to do this my way. Mark studied me for a moment, then gave a small nod. All right, just know I'm here if you need me. Over the following weeks, Lucas's visits became more frequent. Each time he seemed to grow more confident, more at ease with Lily. She adored him, clinging to his every word and proudly showing him her drawings and toys. I watched their bond develop with a mix of hope and caution, my heart torn between the joy in her eyes and the lingering fear of what could go wrong. One evening, after Lucas had left, Lily climbed into my lap, her small arms wrapping around me. Mommy, I love Daddy. Can he stay with us forever? Her innocent words brought tears to my eyes, and I hugged her tightly. We'll see, sweet pea. For now, let's just take it one day at a time. As the days turned into weeks, Lucas began to open up more during his visits. One afternoon, as Lily played with her dolls in the living room, he turned to me, his expression serious. I need to tell you something, he began, his voice low. About my finances. I tensed, bracing myself for what was to come. Go on. I've been struggling, he admitted, his gaze dropping to the floor. When I left, I made a lot of bad decisions. I've been working to pay off my debts, but it's been hard. That's part of why it took me so long to come back. I didn't want to face you like this. His honesty caught me off guard, and for a moment, I wasn't sure how to respond. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't want to scare you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't want you to think I was here because of that. I'm not. I'm here for Lily, and for you if you'll let me be. His words hung in the air, heavy with vulnerability. I wanted to believe him, to trust in the sincerity I saw in his eyes. But trust was something he'd have to earn piece by piece. I appreciate your honesty, I said finally, my voice steady but cautious. But this doesn't change the fact that you have a lot to prove. I know, he said, nodding, and I will. Promise. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I replayed our conversation in my mind. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Not just for Lucas, but for the family we might one day rebuild. But hope alone wasn't enough. It would take time, effort, and above all, trust. As I drifted off to sleep, I resolved to keep moving forward, one careful step at a time, for Lily's sake and my own. Whether Lucas's return would bring healing or heartache, only time would tell. But for now, I was willing to take the risk, guided by the unshakable love I had for my daughter and the faint but persistent hope that maybe, just maybe, Lucas had truly changed. This revision retains the original emotional depth while deepening the complexity of the characters and relationships. It paces the rebuilding of trust and adds more layers to the conflict. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or to continue. Mark's words hung in the air like a fragile truce, their weight pressing down on my chest. But his hurt isn't an excuse, I said, my voice trembling with frustration. It doesn't erase what he did, or the risk he could hurt us again. I know, Mark said softly, and I'm not asking you to forget. Just think about whether he's worth the risk. For Lily's sake, if nothing else. I looked down at my coffee, swirling the dark liquid with a spoon, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. The idea of giving Lucas another chance felt like walking a tightrope without a safety net. But wasn't that what parenting often felt like? Taking leaps of faith for the sake of your child? I'll think about it, I finally said, my tone measured. But I need to see actions, not just words. If Lucas is serious about this, he'll have to prove it. Not just to me, but to Lily. Mark nodded, his expression one of reluctant agreement. That's all I can ask, Mariana. Just don't let him pull you down with him. The evening air was cool when I arrived home, the soft hum of the city serving as a backdrop to my restless thoughts. Lily greeted me at the door with her usual enthusiasm, clutching a new drawing in her small hands. Look, Mommy, she exclaimed, holding up the paper. This time it was a picture of the three of us, Lucas, Lily, and me, smiling under a bright sun. The innocence of her vision struck me like a blow to the chest. In her world, things were simple, untainted by the complexities of adult mistakes and regrets. It's beautiful, sweetheart, I said, pulling her into a hug. You're such an amazing artist. Can we show Daddy? She asked, her voice filled with hope. I hesitated, the question cutting through the haze of my doubts. Maybe soon, Lily, I replied, kissing her forehead. For now, let's put this on the fridge. Okay? Her smile was enough to momentarily quiet the storm in my mind, but I knew it wouldn't last. The decisions I had to make loomed larger than ever. The following morning, I called Lucas and asked him to meet me at the park. It was a place where Lily felt safe, and where I could observe him in an environment that brought out her best self. When we arrived, Lucas was already waiting, sitting on a bench with a small, nervous smile. Daddy! Lily's joyful cry pierced the air as she ran toward him, her arms outstretched. He caught her in a hug, his face lighting up in a way that made my heart ache. Hey, sweet pea, he said, his voice warm and steady. I missed you. I hung back, watching their interaction unfold. Lucas seemed more at ease now, engaging with Lily in a way that felt natural and unforced. He asked about her drawings, her favorite toys, and even what she wanted to be when she grew up. Her giggles filled the air, and for a moment, it was easy to believe in the possibility of redemption. But as I observed them, Mark's warnings echoed in my mind, anchoring me to my skepticism. After some time, I approached, and Lucas's gaze shifted to me, his expression growing more serious. Can we talk? I asked, nodding toward a quieter spot near the swings. Of course, he replied, glancing back at Lily, who was happily playing on the slide. Is everything okay? I folded my arms, steeling myself. Mark told me about your financial situation. Lucas's face fell, and he let out a heavy sigh. I figured he might. Why didn't you tell me yourself? I demanded, my tone sharper than I intended. You've been asking for trust, but you're still keeping secrets. I wasn't trying to hide it, he said, his voice low. I just didn't want you to think I came back because of that. I didn't want you to feel like I was using you or Lily as some kind of escape. But don't you see how this looks, Lucas? Pressed. How can I believe you're here for the right reasons when you've been hiding something so important? He ran a hand through his hair, his expression one of desperation. I get it, Mariana. I know how this looks. But I swear, I'm not here for money or a way out. I'm here because I want to be a father. I want to be the man you and Lily deserve. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard, and for a moment, I could see the man I had once loved. But the wounds he'd left behind were still fresh, and trust wasn't something I could give freely. Not yet. I need time to think, I said finally, my voice trembling. This isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about Lily, and I need to be sure I'm doing what's best for her. Take all the time you need, he said, his gaze steady. I'll prove to you that I mean what I say. That night, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at Lily's drawing on the fridge. The simplicity of her world was both comforting and heartbreaking. She deserved a father who would love her unconditionally, who would never abandon her the way Lucas had abandoned us. But as I replayed the events of the day, a small ember of hope began to flicker within me. Maybe Lucas truly had changed. Maybe he could become the father she deserved. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Not perfect, but real. For now, all I could do was take things one step at a time, guided by the love I had for my daughter and the cautious hope that maybe, this time, Lucas would prove me wrong. Lucas leaned back slightly, his eyes narrowing in contemplation. For a moment, he seemed to be gathering his thoughts, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Mark, he said, his voice laced with frustration. I should have known he'd bring that up. He cares about me, Lucas. About Lily, I said firmly. If there's something I need to know, now's the time to be honest. Are you here because of your debts? He met my gaze, his expression earnest yet strained. It's not that simple, Mariana. Yes, I've been struggling, financially and otherwise, but that's not why I came back. I came because I realized what I'd lost. I didn't want to spend another day without trying to fix what I broke. Do you understand how hard it is for me to believe that? I countered, my voice trembling. You walked away when we needed you most. You left me to pick up the pieces. His jaw tightened, and he nodded slowly. I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I'm here now trying to make amends. I don't expect you to trust me overnight, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove myself. To you and to Lily, I studied him, searching for cracks in his resolve. His words carried sincerity, but sincerity wasn't enough. I needed more than promises. Then start by being completely transparent, I said, my tone steady. What's the full extent of your financial situation? No half-truths. Lucas hesitated, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his face. I'm in debt, a lot of it. After I left, I made some bad choices. Overspending, borrowing more than I could repay. It spiraled out of control. I'm working on it, but it's going to take time. And you didn't think that was worth mentioning before? I asked, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. I was ashamed, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want you to think I was coming back because of that. Because I'm not. I'm here for Lily. And for you, if you'll let me be. His confession hung in the air, heavy with implication. I wanted to believe him, but trust was fragile, and the wounds of the past were still raw. You'll need to prove that, I said finally. Not just with words, but with actions. I will, he said, his voice resolute. I'll show you. The days that followed were filled with cautious interactions. Lucas began visiting more often, always under my watchful eye. Lily adored him, her laughter filling the room whenever he was around. She showed him her drawings, proudly presenting each new creation as if it were a masterpiece. And Lucas, to his credit, seemed genuinely invested, praising her every effort. Yet, despite the growing bond between them, doubt continued to gnaw at me. Was this connection real, or was it just Lucas trying to redeem himself in Lily's eyes? And mine? One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Lucas stayed behind to talk. We sat at the kitchen table, the air between us tense yet charged with unspoken words. I've been thinking, he began, his voice measured. I want to do more for Lily, to be there for her in every way. That's good, I replied cautiously. But being there isn't just about showing up. It's about consistency, reliability. Can you promise that? Yes, he said without hesitation. I've been looking into ways to improve my situation, financially and personally. I want to provide for her, to give her the stability she deserves. And how do you plan to do that? I asked, my skepticism evident. I've started working with a financial counselor, he said. It's a slow process, but I'm committed to turning things around. I also reached out to some old contacts for job opportunities. I want to be someone she can rely on, Mariana. I know I've let you both down, but I'm trying. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. His actions, though small, suggested a willingness to change. But hope wasn't enough, not yet. That's a good start, I said, my tone softening. But it'll take time, Lucas. You can't expect forgiveness or trust overnight. I know, he said, his gaze steady. But I'm willing to earn it, one step at a time. As the weeks passed, Lucas continued to show up. Not just physically, but emotionally. He attended Lily's school events, helped her with her drawings, and even took her to the park on his own. Each interaction chipped away at my defenses, but Mark's warnings lingered in the back of my mind. One evening, Mark stopped by, his expression unreadable as I let him in. "How's it going with Lucas?" he asked, his tone cautious. "He's trying," I replied, crossing my arms. "And Lily's happy, which is what matters most." Mark frowned, his concern evident. "Just don't let your guard down too quickly. People don't change overnight." "I know that," I said sharply, "but I also know that people deserve a chance to prove themselves. And so far, he's doing that." Mark sighed, nodding reluctantly. "All right, just promise me you'll keep an eye on him. For Lily's sake." "I will," I assured him, though a part of me wondered if Mark's doubts would ever fully fade. One night, as I watched Lily sleep, her soft breathing filling the room, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. Life was messy, unpredictable, and often painful, but it was also filled with moments of beauty, like Lily's laughter, her drawings, and the growing bond between her and Lucas. For now, I would let things unfold, step by cautious step. Lucas's return had stirred up old wounds, but it had also brought the possibility of healing. Whether that possibility would become reality was still uncertain, but I was willing to take the risk, for Lily's happiness and, perhaps, for my own. I studied Lucas, his pleading eyes locked on mine. The rawness of his words carried weight, but they weren't enough to quiet the storm in my heart. "You keep saying you've changed, Lucas, but every time I turn around, there's another secret, another complication. How am I supposed to trust you when you can't even be upfront with me?" He exhaled sharply, running his hands through his hair. "I'm trying, Mariana. I didn't tell you about my parents because I knew it would make things harder. But I haven't asked them for anything else since I came back. I'm standing here, right now, trying to figure this out on my own. But that's just it," I countered, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and vulnerability. "You're not on your own anymore. This involves Lily and me whether we want it to or not. Your decisions ripple through our lives. I need to know you understand that." Lucas sat back, his shoulders slumping under the weight of my words. "You're right," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been so focused on proving myself that I didn't stop to think about what I was really asking of you. I don't have all the answers, but I'm not giving up. I want to be better. For Lily, and for you." I crossed my arms, my defenses still firmly in place. "Then you need to start by setting boundaries with your parents. If they're only going to bring more chaos into this, then they have no place here." "I'll do it," he said without hesitation. "I'll cut them off if that's what it takes. I'm not going to let them interfere with this." His immediate agreement caught me off guard, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. But hope wasn't enough. Trust would take more than words. It would take time and actions that aligned with them. The days that followed were a cautious dance. Lucas kept his word, calling his parents and setting firm boundaries. I overheard part of the conversation when he visited one evening. His tone resolute, his words clear. It was a side of him I hadn't seen before, and it made me wonder if he really was changing. Meanwhile, Lily's bond with Lucas continued to blossom. She would light up every time he arrived, showing him her latest drawings or chattering excitedly about her day at school. Watching them together stirred something deep within me, a mixture of longing and fear. One afternoon, as they played tag in the park, Lucas caught her in his arms, spinning her around as she squealed with laughter. I stood at a distance, my heart aching at the sight. It was everything I had wanted for her. A father who loved her, who made her feel safe. But the fear of losing that stability again loomed large. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Lucas and I sat in the living room, the silence between us heavy but not uncomfortable. He cleared his throat, breaking the stillness. "I know this isn't easy for you," he began, his voice steady but soft. "Letting me back into your lives, trusting me again. I don't take it lightly." I nodded, my gaze fixed on the steaming mug of tea in my hands. "It's not easy, Lucas, but I can see you're trying. Lily adores you, and that means everything to me. But this isn't just about her happiness. It's about stability, consistency. If you can't provide that, it's better for her not to have you in her life at all." His expression tightened, and he nodded slowly. "I get that. I know I've made promises before that I didn't keep. But this time is different. I'm not running anymore." "Good," I replied, my voice firm but not unkind. "Because if you do, there's no coming back. Not for me, and not for her." "I won't," he said, his tone resolute. "You have my word." For the first time, his words felt less like promises and more like a commitment. And while I wasn't ready to fully trust him, I allowed myself to take a small step forward, opening the door just a crack. As the weeks passed, Lucas continued to show up. Not just physically, but emotionally. He attended Lily's school events, helped her with her drawings, and even started volunteering at her soccer practices. His presence began to feel less like an intrusion and more like a piece of the puzzle we had been missing. But even as things seemed to be improving, doubts lingered. Was this newfound stability sustainable? Or was it just another fleeting attempt to make amends before the weight of his past pulled him under again? Mark remained a constant voice of caution. He called one evening, his concern evident. "How are things going?" he asked, his tone measured. "He's been stepping up," I admitted. "But I'm still cautious." "Good," Mark replied. "You should be. Lucas might be trying, but he's still Lucas. Just don't let your guard down." "I won't," I assured him, though a part of me wished he could share in the tentative hope I was beginning to feel. One evening, as Lucas helped Lily with a particularly elaborate drawing of a unicorn, she turned to him, her face serious. "Daddy, are you going to stay forever?" Lucas froze, his eyes meeting mine briefly before returning to Lily's. "Yes, sweet pea," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm not going anywhere." Her face lit up, and she threw her arms around his neck. Watching them, I felt a pang of hope and fear. Could I allow myself to believe in his promises? And if I did, would it be enough? As Lucas tucked Lily into bed that night, I lingered in the doorway, watching the tenderness in his actions. He kissed her forehead, smoothing her hair back as she drifted off to sleep. When he turned to leave, he caught my eye, his expression unreadable. "She's everything," he said quietly. "I know," I replied, my voice soft but firm. "That's why I need to protect her." "And I will," he said, his gaze steady. "You have my word." As he left that night, I stood in the silence of the apartment, the weight of my decisions pressing heavily on my shoulders. Lucas was trying, of that I had no doubt. But whether his efforts would be enough to rebuild the trust he had shattered remained to be seen. For now, all I could do was take things one day at a time, holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. As we walked down the sunlit street, Lily skipped ahead, her excitement palpable as she chatted about the flavors she wanted to try. Her joy was infectious, momentarily pushing aside the weight of uncertainty that lingered between Lucas and me. I stole a glance at him, his face softened by the golden glow of the setting sun. For a moment, he seemed like the man I had once known, the man who had promised me a lifetime of love and partnership. But I reminded myself that promises could be broken, and love, no matter how deeply felt, could falter under the weight of life's challenges. At the ice cream parlor, Lily pressed her face against the glass, her little finger pointing at the brightly colored flavors. "I want strawberry," she declared, her voice ringing with delight. Lucas crouched beside her, smiling. "Good choice, sweet pea. I think I'll go for chocolate. What about you, Mom?" Lily turned to me, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I mused, pretending to ponder the array of options. I think I'll have vanilla. Can't go wrong with a classic. As we sat down with our cones, Lily launched into a story about her day at school, her words tumbling over each other in her eagerness to share. Lucas listened intently, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that tugged at my heart. It was clear that he adored her, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was capable of being the father she needed. Later that evening, after we returned home, Lily fell asleep with a contented smile on her face. I stood in the doorway of her room, watching her small chest rise and fall in the steady rhythm of sleep. Lucas appeared beside me, his presence grounding yet unnerving. "She's amazing," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "You've done such a good job with her." "Thank you," I replied, my voice equally soft. "She's my everything. I want to be part of that, Mariana," he said, turning to face me. "I know I've let you down before, but I want to do better. For her. And for you." His words lingered in the air, heavy with both promise and uncertainty. I turned to him, searching his face for the sincerity I hoped to find. "It's going to take more than words, Lucas. If you want to be a part of her life, you have to be consistent. No disappearing, no excuses." "I know," he said, nodding firmly. "And I'm ready for that." Over the following weeks, Lucas began to integrate himself into our lives in small, steady steps. He showed up for Lily's soccer games, cheered her on during school performances, and even helped her with her math homework, a task she usually hated but now approached with newfound enthusiasm. Watching them together, I couldn't deny the bond they were building. It was a tentative connection, fragile yet full of promise. And while my guard remained firmly in place, I found myself softening, little by little. One evening, as Lucas and I sat on the couch after Lily had gone to bed, he turned to me, his expression serious. "I've been offered a job," he said. "That's great," I replied, surprised but genuinely pleased. "Where?" "It's not much," he admitted. "Just a retail position to start, but it's something. A step in the right direction." "It's a good step," I said, my tone encouraging. "I'm proud of you for taking it." "Thank you," he said, his voice laced with gratitude. "It feels good to be doing something productive again. I want to show you and Lily that I'm serious about this." I nodded, his determination chipping away at my lingering doubts. "Keep taking those steps, Lucas. That's how you rebuild trust." One evening, as Lily sat at the kitchen table coloring, she turned to me with a question that stopped me in my tracks. "Mommy, is Daddy going to live with us one day?" I exchanged a glance with Lucas, who had been helping her choose crayons. The question hung in the air, a quiet reminder of the uncertain path we were navigating. "For now, Daddy has his own place," I said gently. "But we'll see how things go, okay?" Lily nodded, her attention returning to her drawing. But her words lingered in my mind, stirring emotions I wasn't yet ready to confront. The journey toward rebuilding our family wasn't without its challenges. Lucas stumbled at times, struggling to balance his newfound responsibilities with the weight of his past mistakes. But he never stopped trying, and that effort began to mean more than the failures that had preceded it. As weeks turned into months, I found myself daring to hope that maybe this time, things would be different. Trust, like love, wasn't built in a day. It was a mosaic of moments, each one adding to the picture of a future I was cautiously beginning to envision. And while the scars of the past would always remain, they no longer felt like insurmountable barriers. Instead, they were reminders of the strength it had taken to survive, and the courage it took to believe in the possibility of something better. One night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes and whispered, "I'm so glad Daddy's here." Her words brought tears to my eyes, and I kissed her forehead, my heart full. "Me too, sweetheart," I said softly. "Me too." As I stood in the doorway of her room, watching her drift off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but for the first time, I felt ready to walk it. Not just for Lily, but for myself. And for Lucas, who was proving, step by step, that love and redemption were possible, even after the darkest storms. And we've reached the end of another story. If you enjoyed it, leave a comment telling us what you thought about it, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so that YouTube understands that you liked it and recommends more videos to you.